Hi, I'm Kevin Henry with the City of Bellevue. The mudslide in Oso, Washington on March 22nd resulted in the deaths of more than 40 people. It devastated the community. We are speaking today with City of Bellevue employees who played a vital role in the recovery effort and the emergency response to that disaster. Joining us today are Lieutenant Richard Burke, Community Liaison Officer with the Bellevue Fire Department, Robin Hasseth, Public Information Officer with the Bellevue Parks and Community Services, Officer Carla Iafrate with the Bellevue Police Department, and Jeffrey Negrete, Rescue Specialist with Washington Task Force 1. Welcome. Let's start with some background. Tell me what your roles were in the recovery effort and how long each one of you were there. Why don't we start with you, Richard?
All right. Well, thanks for having me. I showed up on Sunday morning, so day 7 or 8 after the slide had happened, and arrived to Arlington to the Joint Information Center there, and was assigned as the West Side Operations Public Information Officer for that division. There was 2 divisions, the East and West Side. So my job was to be in the field during the operations and manage the media and basically tell the story of the devastation that had occurred in Oso, Washington. Small town USA, they weren't really prepared to tell this message, and so I arrived and took over those duties from Battalion Chief Steve Mason, who was acting as the division chief and the public information officer.
How about you, Robin?
I was in Oso at the same time that Lieutenant Burke was there, and I'm a public information officer, and my job was kind of twofold. I helped take photographs to help document the tragedy, and I also worked with the media to develop some opportunities for them to meet the search dogs and provide information and some demonstrations around the great work that they were doing.
Next we have Carla.
I arrived the same day as Lieutenant Burke on day 8. I arrived in the late afternoon, and my job was to first check in at the Joint Information Center in Arlington, which then I immediately got redeployed to the east side, the Darrington side, which now would be a 2-hour drive since the 530 was taken out, that State Route 530. So I immediately got briefed and jumped back in my rig and drove over to Darrington, where I was then stationed out of the field office, which was a makeshift office in the firehouse. My job there was to be part of the PIO media group. I would escort the media people from their briefing area and out to the debris site. I would bring them out to where Lieutenant Burke was, and he would be briefing and the media at the time, and then they would be able to shoot their photographs and their video of the debris field and be able to document the devastation.
How about you, Jeffrey?
I was deployed to the slide about 2.5 days after the slide happened. I got the call on Monday afternoon, and by Monday night, we were on our way up to Oso. We got there early Tuesday morning, set up camp, and went up to work on the pile. And our primary function was to search for people that were in the debris.
Now, this is for everyone, really. When you're driving up there and you're thinking about it as you're driving up there, did you have any kind of thoughts through your head or expectations of what you might see, or were you afraid of what you might see even?
There's a lot of thought that went into it's kind of a surreal experience. We're on a bus and we're driving up there, and they've got state patrol stopping traffic on all the on-ramps and everything. So there's a convoy moving all the way up there, and we had an escort all the way. We got there and they took us up on the hill, and we immediately were put into an environment where we had to work with the locals who had lost their family and try and coordinate some type of plan so that we could continue the search. And at that point, we still had hopes for a search and rescue, which had eventually transitioned to a search and recovery. But that was a lot going on in your head while you're heading up there, for sure.
Well, the first 5 minutes I was there, Lieutenant Burke says, "Have you been out to the site yet?" And I said, "No." And he said, you need to go look at it if you're going to be helping the media and dealing with the families. And you do. You have to see it to be able to understand the breadth of the devastation. It was just more than you can imagine.
Yeah, I'm sure. And speaking of yourselves as well as the other people that were there, I think the word teamwork comes into my thoughts when I think of the different people who were from federal, state, local agencies. What type of teamwork did you see there? How do you feel about that? What are your thoughts about that? Why don't we start with Carla?
Well, it's just incredible the logistics that go on with all these different agencies showing up from state and federal and city officials. When I arrived to the Darrington Firehouse and walked in the door, I had like 7 PIOs, that's public information officers, that's what I do for the Bellevue Police Department, look up at me, and they were just like, oh good, we need more people. Because remember, this is day 8, and that first 7 days is a blur, I'm sure, to a lot of people. So the teamwork was great. We had a PIO from the governor's office, from Washington Department of Transportation. We had a King County Sheriff's Office PIO there, myself, a fire chief from Edmonds, and just everybody knew what to do. I kind of call them the power PIOs after I left there after 5 days. Everybody knew what to do. They worked well together. Everybody teamed up. Whatever task you had to do, no matter how small or how large, you just chipped in. And we were right next door to where all the volunteers were coming in. And every morning we had a 0800 briefing with the volunteers that came in that would put their boots on and duct tape them, their pants to their boots, and put on their gear and be briefed by operations from the night before to go out on the pile. So it was incredible, and it made you really feel good about humanity.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts about the teamwork that you saw?
You drive up and there are 100 trucks representing every agency from FEMA to state agencies, local agencies. You just get this incredible sense just driving up to the headquarters, how much support there is for this community. And everyone, like Carla said, was just willing to pitch in and do whatever little job or big job needed doing. They just said, we need somebody to do X, and somebody would say, I'm on it. And everyone worked together just really, really well.
Most amazing thing when I arrived was the ownership that everybody had taken up to that point. Being the new person on the block, especially coming from a larger city like Bellevue, you spent some quiet time just kind of absorbing what was going on, because it was very raw for this community. They had lost so much. These were family friends, lifetime acquaintances. Some of them were one of the fire captains from Oso had lost his wife and granddaughter. So you didn't want to come in and take over for them. You wanted to work alongside of them. So you had to kind of earn your place in their world, because they'd been at it for 7 days already. So we had to reassure them that we weren't there to take this away from them, that, as Jeff said, we were there to support their already ongoing activities. But they were tired, they were worn out, and we were kind of transitioning in new crews. But even more than that, we had to learn a little bit about the community so that we could tell this story accurately. That's our job, is to be able to tell the rest of this, the area, the country, the world, the story of this very incredible small community and the loss that they've sustained. So we had to earn their trust, and hopefully we continue to earn that from them.
This is to the panel again, whoever wants to go first. Was there anything that struck you on a more emotional or personal level, something that you feel like will stay with you the rest of your lives from this experience? Why don't we start with Jeff?
There's definitely several things that will stay with me for the rest of my life. Probably first and foremost will be the support I got from the community up there. They had lost family, friends, loved ones, and they still took the time to make sure that we were taken care of. For our first couple days we were up there, they give you some gear, 3 MREs and a toothbrush, and say go to work. We didn't have a dining facility, we didn't have shower facilities, we didn't have laundry facilities, and after a day of working on the pile, everything you own is wet and muddy, and these people opened their homes, and they came down and they took our laundry. And the first night that we were there, we didn't have anything. The second night, there was a line of cars that was about a mile long, and we didn't notice it at first, but a woman came up and said she'd like to take a bag of laundry. We all thought, yeah, that's great. What about the rest of us? Whose bag are we going to throw in there? And we looked, and there were more than enough cars for everyone to take a bag or two of our laundry. And it was 9 o'clock at night, and my clothes were warm and dry the following morning by 6, which means that they stayed up all night to do our laundry. They made us sack lunches so we could have a lunch instead of an MRE. They collected towels so that we could take a shower at the community center. And these are people that have lost everything, their family, their friends, their town was gone, but they still were able to pool the resources together and support us and prop us up and make our job a little bit easier. And that was one of the things that I'll probably always remember. Another thing that I'll remember is the raw emotion of normally when we do rescue work, we're not working with family members, we're not working with friends. They're removed from the scene, and it's my crew. And they're people that I know and that I've worked with for a long time. And when we're digging through the pile and we're recovering someone that is someone's sister or someone's mother or father, there's a lot more emotion involved there. And the people that were running the machines and digging and working with us were family and friend and loved ones of the people that were recovering. So that brought a lot more emotion to what we were doing.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
People would ask, how do you judge success with this kind of loss? How do you set a bar for success? And on a personal level, for me, coming in at the end of the day and having somebody from the community, as Jeff said, that had lost so much, and have them come up and wrap their arms around you and thank you, or show you a picture of who you were out there for, or a story. You know, my worst day was the day I left, because I became so attached to these people that you just wanted to do more for them, because they had given so. I mean, I think I received in tenfold what I delivered to this community. It was it woke up a part of me that I didn't know existed, and it was amazing to work with them, to be around them. But it changed who I am. It changed how perspective. So I hope to always keep them in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
We had an event where the Seahawks and the Sounders came up to kind of give a little bit of ease to the families, and especially the kids that are up there. And I remember talking to one of the community service workers there. She said, well, where did you stay last night? How long have you been here? And I said, well, I stayed in my sleeping bag, because, you know, when they told you, hey, you know, you're getting deployed, you just kind of grab your gear and sleeping bag, because you'll probably just be sleeping on the floor somewhere. And I said, well, I have my sleeping bag. She goes, oh, well, you can just come and stay with us in our house. And this is like what Jeff and Richard are saying, is that they would just open their homes to you. So, you know, I was able to sleep in a nice bed in a home for the rest of my deployment up there. And, you know, something as simple as that, because you're working 15-hour days, and you know, you have to get some shut-eye, so it's nice to come back to a bed and a shower. So, you know, something as simple as that. It's definitely changed my life, and just the enormity of this tragic event, to go out. And that was my job as the public information officer, taking the media in and out, so I was going back and forth a lot on the pile. And to see their reaction each time it's their first time, a reporter's first time or a photographer's first time, just to have their breath taken away because it's such a large event. And for people that live in the city of Bellevue, it's very similar to what Rich and I kind of described, is if you're standing on Somerset facing west towards Lake Washington, and if that whole side of Somerset was to slide away and go over Factoria and over I-405 and I-90 and over Ennetai and into the lake, that's the size you're looking at. It's 1.25 miles and it's enormous. So if you haven't stood out there and just feel like a little speck, and you can't even recognize what was there before. So just being out there and seeing how the community has really wrapped themselves around trying to work towards finding their loved ones, and we as people that represent trying to get the media out there to tell the story, it was important for us to let the community know it's important to let other people know about this and to know about it right, and that we were going to assist them in being very careful about how we get it expressed out into the community in national news. I mean, it was national news. It's that big of an event.
But it was all about respecting those families that Carla was talking about. The simplest thing, which photographs you would release and which ones you wouldn't. Thinking about who might see that photograph and be able to recognize the twisted remnants of something and know that that was theirs. There was just such respect for the families and everything, and all the work that everyone did, that was always at the forefront. It was what would be best for the families? What do we think the families would want? Who's talked to someone, we didn't guess. People actually talked with the families and worked with the families to say, how do you want this handled? And that was something that was just, you don't see every day.
Just the amount of giving. There were so many supplies rolling in from anywhere, and money being put into accounts, and just anything that people needed came rolling in. And so they would have, at least on the Darratine side, which I saw, they'd have volunteers just handling all this influx of, shoes and socks and boots and batteries and anything you can think of. So the coordination of that itself, everybody just pitched in and got it done.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's easy to take life for granted until you see something like that, and then you really appreciate every second of it. Last question I really have is, what are some of the lessons that you learned from your time in the field, and how would you apply these lessons to, heaven forbid, something like that should happen in Bellevue or in this area?
I'll start. What I learned is that with all those hundreds of people there helping, people will help each other out. And you may feel like there's no one, you live in a little tiny community in the middle of nowhere and no one's going to come support you. That's not true. People will come out and support you and do everything they can. And you know that, and you hope that it never happens, but when you see those people, we're very lucky to live in an area where people really care, and everybody's willing to come and do what they can.
I think a lesson that I learned that we could apply to here in Bellevue is making the most of your volunteers and utilizing their special skills if they have them. We had several volunteers that came up and worked very hard at a particular task, whether it was digging or passing out lunches or fueling the equipment, to find out a day or two later that they had some specialized skills. One of them was a surveyor that was up there and was using his vacation time to come and volunteer. We immediately put him to work as a surveyor, and he helped design the grid system that helped us recover a lot of people. And he was a gem that was there in plain sight. We had a lady that came up that was also looking in the debris, that we found out she was a veterinary technician, and we had canine search dogs up there that needed continual veterinary help. So we were able to pull her off of the pile and put her somewhere where her specialized services could be utilized. And she too had been there for several days before we realized that she had another skill that was quite useful to us. And even within our own department, I deployed with a lieutenant, a medic, an MSO with the City of Bellevue. I've been a fireman with them for a long time. I had no idea that he had the communication skills that and the equipment knowledge that he had. He got up there and instead of working as a medic, worked as our communications officer, and he set up all of the radio transmitters, set up our phone lines, even set up some Wi-Fi for us so that we could have a little bit of comfort back where we were staying. And these were all skills that I wouldn't see in his normal work life, but he was very talented and put all that to work. So I guess to sum it up, make sure that you're utilizing your volunteers to the best of their abilities.
How about you, Richard?
Oh, I think what I could take away from this is I hope when we look retrospectively at this years from now, it'll be a scenario that was done right, what we did right. And not perfect by any stretch. I don't think something of this size or magnitude could be done perfect, but it was done right. And I think it was done right for a couple reasons. One of the most important is because we never, as Rob and everybody has said, we never lost sight of the community of people that we were there to serve. We weren't there to check any boxes. We weren't there because we got assigned. It was our turn. It was a privilege to go, and I know that Jeff would say that.
Yeah.
It was a privilege to show up and help. But we always stayed focused on the mission, and the mission was the community. Imagine going someplace to the store and coming back and your street is gone, not your house. Your house could burn down to the ground, but there's insurance, we rebuild those. The street's gone, your family's gone, every picture, every vehicle, everything in your life is gone and may never be found with all the Herculean efforts that were made. But everybody showed up every day. Family, volunteer, professional, search and rescue, equipment operator, logger, showed up every day with what we could do for the community. And it drove you to want to do more for them. And as tired as you could be at the end of the day, you always wondered if you had done enough. And I said in one of the interviews, it's the best part of being an American, that when the chips are down and it's a dark day, everyone rises to the occasion. And I think this will be a true example of a community that rose to that occasion. So it was a privilege to work with all these folks up there. We didn't see a lot of each other because of the size of the incident, but lots of hours were put into it. And I think that will be the lesson learned is how strong the American will is.
How about you, Carly? Any lessons learned?
Well, there's certainly going to be lots of lessons learned. Like Richard said, it never goes perfect. But even when things aren't going exactly right, everybody just went into solution. You just find a new way to do it, or you just make it happen. And I think, if anything, hopefully not, but happens here in Bellevue, we have a lot of knowledgeable people in this city, and we have the driving force behind our city management. So we're really lucky to work for the City of Bellevue, and people up there would look at my patch and say, "Bellevue, wow, you're all the way up from Bellevue," and just give you this big hug, and said, "Yep, we're here."
Mm-hmm. Last thoughts? Any other thoughts before we close this conversation?
Well, I don't know, I've probably spoken too much. But
No, go ahead.
I was impressed with the media that came, how respectful they were of the families. Jeff was out on the pile early on, and they had found an American flag, small American flag in the rubble pile, and it sat at the entrance to the West Division. So when you came to work every day, you saw that flag. And it was later replaced with a garrison flag, which is a large flag. But that flag truly, people would walk by it and no one wanted to touch it, but everybody looked at it. And when the media arrived, it was one of the first things that they saw. And it was tattered and dirty, and but it really set a tone, and they were very respectful of what they did out there. And it's print and video and news media from across the country, across the world came. I thought they did a nice job representing the community. Again, everyone stayed focused on how to start to heal this wound, and it was impressive.
Well, I want to thank you all for sharing your experiences and your stories, and I know everybody here at the City of Bellevue is very proud of your contributions and taking the time to go out there, and just thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks.